we do want to get your opinion on the ceasefire, the ongoing ceasefire right now. Where do you think it's going to go? Do you think this could continue? Like it may be a prolonged situation and they may have some sort of additional negotiation? Or do you think this is just a pause on some very big massacres?
I'm waiting for the false flag. Hamas attacked us first, where they end the ceasefire.
What I will say first and foremost is you've asked a question that a few clients have asked and that the clients are paying and you're not paying. But, so after this podcast goes out...
You didn't have to tell them.
No. So after this podcast goes out, no client is going to come to me to ask the question. But anyway, regardless, yalla, bismillah.
Do you want an answer?
No, I'll answer.
We'll put it behind a paywall.
No, but Jin, just so people know about what the industry is like, this is genuinely a question that is posed by clients. But to answer this question, and we'll put the political analyst hat on, the reason the truce has come about is because Netanyahu is under pressure domestically and Biden is under pressure domestically. Before they didn't want the truce, so they implemented it, which means they've been forced into a truce. They're forced into a situation that they don't want, suggesting that what Netanyahu wants is a return to the military operations. The reason he can't return to the military operations is because of that domestic pressure. When Blinken went to Netanyahu to propose the humanitarian pause, Axios reported that Blinken told Netanyahu, help us to help you, because your atrocities is turning public opinion, but also that Netanyahu said to Blinken that I need to know that this humanitarian pause is, quote, not a plan from Biden to lure me into a ceasefire, suggesting that we think their hearts are united, but قلوبهم شتى. The reason why I mention that is it does appear that with the extension of the ceasefire now for 2 days, before I entered in here and a few hours ago I saw the news, it's been extended for 2 days. It does appear that this might be a situation that leads to a permanent ceasefire. Again, al-ghaybu 'inda Allah. But I think the dynamics do suggest that there is a move towards a permanent ceasefire. And one of the ways that, the reason I say that is because Ben Gvir, the right-wing ally of Netanyahu, is loudly condemning the truce and the hostage exchange because he believes that this means that there will not be a military operation after this truce. The second point worth noting is that the Times of Israel, when the elderly hostages were released by Hamas, the Times of Israel reported 2 weeks ago, you can find this on Google actually, they reported that Netanyahu and the IDF were, quote, frustrated and annoyed that the hostages were being released because it would threaten the support for a military operation in Gaza, suggesting that if the hostages are released, Israel will not have the international support to continue a military operation. The third dynamic worth noting here is that there is increasingly loud voices now from Israeli allies that have turned against Israel. The BBC itself actually reported, BBC Wama Adrak, reported and said that the international allies of Israel genuinely believe that they're now at a stage where they will permanently lose their ability to win support from the global south and lose public opinion because everybody can see the double standards. So David Cameron, the new foreign minister of the UK, has now come out criticizing Israel and what it's doing. The deputy prime minister of Belgium is calling for sanctions. Macron has already called for a ceasefire. Spain has said it's ready to recognize a Palestinian state. And we're already seeing the Saudis, who ideally want to have normalization, but find themselves being forced now to increasingly criticize the Israelis. All of that suggests that the window of opportunity for Israel to return to military operations is now closing. And that's why I think, and I could be wrong, I think that the dynamic suggests that it is more likely that this will end up a permanent unofficial ceasefire. By unofficial, I mean if you look at Yemen, for example, there's no official ceasefire between the Houthis and the Saudis, but there hasn't been fighting for a year and a half or 2 years. And the reason why is Saudi doesn't want to sign a deal that legitimizes the Houthis, but doesn't want to fight. And the Houthis don't want to fight, so they've accepted the ceasefire. It may well be that we will see extension after extension after extension, not because the Israelis think they will go back to military operations, but because the Israelis do not want to be humiliated into recognizing Hamas by signing a permanent ceasefire. So there will be a de facto ceasefire, and the debate will shift to what do we do in Gaza? Do we bring the Palestinian Authority? Do we recognize Hamas again? And I think the final thing worth noting is that Netanyahu's party in the Knesset, in the parliament, is trying to pass a bill to accelerate the establishment of settlements in northern Gaza. The reason they're pushing the bill to accelerate it suggests that they're racing against time in order to try to entrench the gains that they've made, suggesting there's a concern it could be reversed, which suggests that there is a sentiment that the military operation to further make gains is no longer an option, so let's entrench what we've already had. So all of those are simply signs. You know, you're assessing what's happening in the news, but I think it's more likely that the de facto ceasefire will continue. The Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesman, Lulu Al-Khater, is in Gaza at the moment as well, which suggests that the Qataris and the official presence there suggests they believe certainly that there will be a prolonged ceasefire. So the direct answer to your question is, I think there is a good chance there will be a prolonged ceasefire. I think that Netanyahu is uncomfortable with it, but has very limited room to maneuver.
Okay. So their only option is, well, to make the gains, because part of the ceasefire is that anyone who went south can't go back north, right? So they're going to resettle there, or not resettle, they're going to settle there, and then, Benjamin Netanyahu will try to do whatever he can to salvage his party.
And I think one of the reasons that is becoming a hot topic is because Biden has suggested that Israel should not reoccupy Gaza and that there shouldn't be settlements in northern Gaza. And I think that now what's happening is that as public opinion increases the pressure, I think there's increasing divergence in terms of what the end result should be between the Americans and the Israelis.
Yeah.
Because Biden, according to Politico, and Erdogan also said it as well, there is a growing sense among Israel allies that nobody wants Netanyahu in power after all this is finished. That Benny Gantz is expected to take over Netanyahu, and that Biden has made clear to Netanyahu, I don't want you there. Also, the presence of William Burns, the head of the CIA, for those who don't know, in the political field, when Blinken is in charge of something, that's like a first attempt by diplomatic officials. When William Burns gets on a plane, that's when the big boys come out. That's when something serious is in. And this ceasefire actually came about after William Burns left Washington to go and negotiate it, suggesting that there's a view that Blinken messed up and Blinken has been messed, and they're no longer tolerating the nonsense that he's doing. And I think that in that particular context, it may well be that now the polls in Israel, I think 2 days ago, they suggested that Netanyahu and his entire alliance would lose any elections that are held today. I think that Netanyahu now is facing an existential threat to his own political future. And I think that it appears that as public opinion increases and Biden gets increasingly in trouble, I think that will only increase the divergence between the Americans and the Israelis. Having said that,
That's a good thing.
having said that, I don't think Biden will come out openly and say I've turned against the Israelis, but we will see that sort of that pressure behind the scenes. And I think that, and for anybody who says no, I think there'll be a return to war. Again, I go back to that point. The fact we have a hostage truce when Netanyahu is adamantly refusing means that pressure has been brought to bear that forced him into a situation that he did not want, which means there is a force that is in operation at the moment, forcing the Israelis to buckle. I think that's public opinion. That's why I think everybody should keep shouting loud and keep roaring about the issue of Palestine and keep highlighting it. And I think the Americans now are hoping, given that November is next year, they're hoping let's end this so that Muslims have 1 year to forget so that they will go and vote Democrat again.